Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. We have a very interesting topic that I'm sure is of great interest to all of you that we're discussing today. That is how to avoid the Google slap. And my name is Dush Ramachandran. I'm Vice President of Sales and Business Development at ClickBank. And with me is our guest, Fred Vallaeys from Google. Fred, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Dush. So hello, everyone. My name is Fred Vallaeys. I'm the AdWords Evangelist at Google. Started at Google about 8 years ago. I had been an engineer, got unemployed during the first dot-com bubble bursting, and decided to become a wedding photographer. But also was looking at this company called Google, was just starting with some self-service ads, and I was actually using it because I didn't have any customers as a wedding photographer, so I was using it and I said, hey, this is a pretty cool way to find new clients. And they needed someone who spoke Dutch. I'm from Belgium originally, so that's how I ended up working at the company. But it was an interesting dual perspective because I was advertising. Even after I came to them, I was still advertising the wedding photography business. And so I eventually had my own account manager, and I would come in some days and I'd be really upset because Google engineers had gone and made a change to the way that broad match worked or the way that some sort of reports were working. And so I'd be taking it out on my account manager, which I don't recommend you guys do because don't antagonize your account manager. They're actually the one who can help you and lobby on your behalf with the engineers. And that's pretty much what my manager said to me as well. She was like, hey, this is not productive for you to yell at the account manager. Go and yell at the engineers. Go get them to fix whatever you think is wrong, or get them to understand what the advertiser's perspective is and help them understand why an advertiser might think a little bit differently from an engineer who's sitting at Google and who doesn't actually run ads of their own. So that kind of became my role in terms of going out into the field and helping you guys understand why Google is doing some of the things that we do, what we're thinking about that, and then hopefully take a lot of feedback back as well. So we'll have questions today. And give me feedback about how we're doing, what the big issues are, and I'll take that back to the development teams as well and make sure that at least, I can't promise that we're going to fix it, but I do promise that they can be made aware of where you guys are coming from.
Great. Thanks, Fred. So what we're going to do today is rather than sit up on the podium and talk at you, we're going to have an interactive dialogue between Fred and myself. We have collected a number of questions that a lot of people have asked so far. So we'll go through this dialogue and we'll answer your questions. And at the end of the session, we've left enough time for questions from the audience. So what we'll do is, at that point, Fred will be up here and I'll come over to you. If you have a question, just raise your hand. I'll come over to you. We'll ask the question. And we'll make sure that we get the question answered to the best of our abilities. So let's kick it off. This is going to be, as I said, completely interactive. So this is going to be meaningful, and we hope that you'll go away from this meeting with some specific actionable things that you can do with your sites that will give you better traction and will avoid any issues with landing page quality scores. So Fred, could you briefly describe sort of the whole purpose of Google enforcing landing page quality standards? What's the background behind it?
Sure. Yeah, so Google's mission is to make all the world's information useful and accessible to everyone, and really make sure that when somebody goes and does a search, they get useful information out of it. And we think about advertising the same way that we think about the organic results, about any other information that we're organizing. So the problem was that we had this ecosystem where you have publishers who get paid when somebody clicks on the ad. You have the advertisers who want people to click on their ads, but hopefully people who click on the ads actually end up buying something from them. And then you have the user searching for useful information. And so those three participants in the ecosystem don't necessarily have incentives that are correctly aligned. They don't all have the same incentives. So what we said is we have to have a system which rewards the relevance of advertisers so that we push them to make the most relevant ads, because if they have relevant ads, then that means more people click on those ads, which means that the publishers make more money. But the relevance of the ad also means that the user is happier because they actually find what they were looking for. And not only are they happy today, and they're happy with that experience they just had, but it incentivizes them to keep coming back, right? So for the advertiser, there's the gain right now, but there's also the fact that, 10 years down the line, people still look at these ads as a useful piece of information. If you think back 12 years ago, it was banner blindness was sort of creeping into the internet, and the whole reason for that was that you had these ads, but these ads were useless. They were screaming at you. They were trying to get you to punch the monkey, sign up for a credit card that you didn't need. And so the reality reaction was users started installing these banner blocking systems. And so everybody was losing out in that system. And so what Google said is, well, we need to make sure that with the new advertising system that we have, we don't run into the same pitfalls. And that's where the whole quality score mechanism came about, right? So we said we have to have a measure of relevance and make sure that we're enforcing that so that everybody in this marketplace is happy.
Cool. You know, there's a lot of misinformation about exactly how these landing page quality scores are given, how they're calculated, who does it, is it done by robots, is it done by human beings? So give us a little bit of background on exactly how Google goes about awarding or assigning quality scores to websites.
Yeah, so when I joined Google 8 years ago, the way that we would determine whether your ad was high relevance was literally me as someone reviewing your ad saying, okay, I think this is relevant, I don't think this is relevant, right? So it was a human decision. Obviously not the most scalable, not the most objective, right? If your ad was being reviewed by somebody else, then they might make a different decision. So then we very quickly got into a system where we said, okay, we're gonna measure the CTR, the click-through rate of these ads, and anytime it's lower than 0.5%, then automatically that means that keyword is disabled. So not the greatest system either, because you might be just getting started, maybe you didn't know exactly what you were doing, you fall below that threshold, well, there's no way to turn that ad back on. So we got more and more sophisticated, and today we obviously have a system that's largely automated. But the caveat to that is we're not just, the way that the automation is built, it actually comes from humans who look at the ad results on Google and they make a judgment, are the ad results good today? So they might sit there, they might review ads and judge each one of them. And so over time, we might see a trend that we might say, oh, well, we've had a lot of complaints either from users emailing us in or from the human evaluation that we do, where we see there's a trend and there's a lot of get-rich-quick schemes, right? And that's leading to bad ads. And then we can see, are these ads bad because they're irrelevant, or are these ads bad because they have poor landing pages? Right. Well, one of the great examples is you can actually get a great CTR by promising someone a free iPod in an ad. Right, so easy way to game the system, because a high CTR typically means a high quality score. But then when the user clicks on that and they find out, oh, I need to sign up 6 of my friends, I need to sign up for Netflix, Blockbuster, this and that to be able to get this offer, all of a sudden they're not quite as happy anymore, right? So they've clicked on something and now they're disappointed. And so we had to put in place the landing page quality mechanism. And the way that all these mechanisms work is, again, we start from the human element, we see what are the issues right now, and then we try to teach the machines to identify those issues. So we say, okay, there's a problem with free iPod sites, go and find all these ads that seem to be promising free iPods, and go take a look at these landing pages, like what's going on? Do you actually get the free iPod you were promised, or do they make it really, really hard? That system then goes and makes the judgment on these ads, and so that's where landing page quality largely comes in, and it will give you a poor landing page quality if that happens to be the case. And then obviously if you think that was a mistake, and machines do make mistakes, you email us in. If you have a support person, you can call that support person, and then they can take a look, make sure the machine actually did the right thing, and correct that if it wasn't the case. The other thing I would say is, again, when users email in and they specifically say, hey, I'm worried about this site, it was promising one thing, I didn't get that from it, then it could actually be human right there on the spot making the decision to shut your site off and assign it a bad landing page quality.
So this is a good example because a number of site owners that we've spoken to have said the same thing, which is, does Google actually go and test it out? I mean, if I promise a free iPod, does Google actually go and check out how easy it is to get the iPod? Or is that a judgment call that's made by someone?
Right, so in many of these cases of the offers, we can't actually go all the way through to the end of the offer. Many times you don't need to do that.
Right.
If we were in a situation where there was serious doubt, it honestly could go one way or the other, and it's in those cases especially that you do want to email support and say, hey, listen, I know I might look like this, but really, I really do give people free iPods. Okay. I would be very dubious of those claims, but we will take a look at those, right? And that's where you can then actually prove yourself to be different and get that exception to the rule. Okay. But if we see that 95% of these types of sites do the thing that we don't like, then yes, you're likely to also find yourself caught in that same mechanism. Okay,
that makes sense. A number of site owners have also said to us that they've been running their sites with Google just fine for quite a number of years. They've spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands in a year on advertising, and suddenly their landing page quality scores goes down. So is that because the landing page quality scores initiative is relatively new, or has the enforcement been beefed up, or what's happened that's caused a whole lot of sites to be given very poor landing page quality scores suddenly? Is there anything?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that much as with SEO, it's a very continuously evolving system, and so even though we might call landing page quality LPQ the day that we launched it, it's not the same thing anymore that it used to be back then. It's always being changed. In fact, if you listen to the SEC calls that Google does every quarter when we announce earnings, I believe it was 2 quarters ago we said that we had done on average 1 change to the quality score mechanism every week, right? And these were changes that, again, because the way that you guys understand quality score is pretty much the same that it was 2 years ago at this point. We haven't made huge drastic changes to it. And landing page quality, by the way, being the last major thing that we introduced. But we do tweak how that works, right? So again, we initially saw a lot of problems with free iPod sites, so that's what we went after. But nowadays, we might see more issues with get-rich-quick schemes, you know, Google Money Tree, that kind of thing. So based on that, we'll reteach the algorithms to go and find more of those sites and then give those a penalty. And it's not. This could happen any day, pretty much, is the answer. And then the other thing that was sort of in your question too was about the money. So. I certainly would say it is the case that if all of a sudden you have a campaign that starts spending a lot of money, it's not so much the money that we care about, but it's the fact that all of a sudden your ad is being seen by a lot more users. So it probably will go up in our review queue, right? The automated review queue will say, oh, something changed here. You know, this is either brand new or they're doing something different because traffic has spiked. And that would cause the site to be reevaluated. Now, that said, the evaluation process is actually continuous. So every couple of days on your sites, you should see the Google Ads bot visiting. And what it does when it visits is it looks at uniqueness of content on the page, it tries to look at the user experience, and then, so some of these signals it can actually see the moment that it comes to the site, it can say, oh, this seems to be duplicated content from this other site, so that's a red flag. That's probably something that deserves a bad landing page quality. But it could also see over time, so like what are the behaviors that we're seeing, like what are the trends that we're seeing, and that longer term picture, that can also start influencing how your landing page quality ends up. And the corollary to that is then that, of course, if you make a change, that for us to understand that change is actually long-term beneficial can also take us a couple of weeks, a couple of months in some cases to get to that point.
Okay. So there's another misconception we should probably get out of the way very, very early on in this session. There's a broad perception that Google doesn't like affiliates. Mm-hmm. Is that true?
No, it is not true.
Okay.
I wouldn't be here if
that was
true. Right, so, and it's easy to understand where that misconception comes from. I actually really like affiliates. It's part of the reason that I'm here, and the reason for it is that I think you guys, you push the envelope. You know, you're always sort of pushing into those gray areas, which is why we're having this discussion. But at the end of the day, I think it was the affiliates who were the original big players in AdWords. They were the ones who got the eBays and the Amazons of the world to understand, oh my God, the search marketing thingy, actually a lot of traffic comes from that and it's really cost effective. And that's why we started having issues, because other people started figuring it out. And all of a sudden you did a search on any keyword on Google and you'd see 4 or 5 ad results, all for ebay.com. Well, you know, that was great, but we thought the user doesn't need to see 5 ads of the same thing, right? We want to give them variety. So that's where we instituted what we called the affiliate policy, which was the policy of having one visible URL per query, right? So only 1 ad from eBay, 1 ad from Amazon on any of those pages. Now, the important thing about that policy is Google did not say only eBay itself can advertise. We said the highest ranked ad for the ebay.com domain is the one that wins. And in many cases, that was actually not eBay, that was an affiliate, right? So in those cases, the affiliates, they got to continue running on this. And then the problem evolved further because now eBay said, oh, well, we kind of think we can do this better. And by the way, I don't want to pick on eBay, right? I'm just using eBay as an example here of a big company that now does much of this in-house. But they said, we can take this in-house, we want to manage it ourselves. So affiliates no longer get to direct link to our domain. So what's the natural response? Well, you start making your own domains, maybe bridge pages, thin doorway pages, and now all of a sudden you have 5 ads that look different, but the experience when the user clicks on them is that ultimately they go to eBay, except with these 4 ads from affiliates on different domains, they have to do one more click to achieve that goal, right? So that's even a worse experience now. So that's where we started getting into problems, and that's why landing page quality came about, because we started seeing a lot of this behavior, which wasn't really something we could capture in just looking purely at the click-through rates. And that's I think where that whole perception comes from, that Google doesn't like affiliates.
Okay, that's good to know, and thanks for that explanation. Now, I'm going to take you into some specific questions, specific areas that, there's a lot of misconceptions that people have. And again, people come by these misconceptions honestly, in that they just understand that they see a symptom and they interpret it to mean something else. So one example of this is direct linking. Lots of affiliates are under the impression that direct linking from a search results page to a vendor sales page is a bad thing per Google. Is that correct?
No, so absolutely not. And I think that goes back largely to the last story that I told. We actually prefer it if you were able to link directly to Amazon, eBay, whoever it is that you're promoting. But because of the rules that those companies may have put in place, it's no longer possible. For us, it's the preferred way, because if you're promoting eBay, why not take people directly to eBay, right? So now the situations that you get is where you have to maybe build a shopping comparison engine that combines results from a couple of these sources. And then the sort of the red flags that you run into is now you're maybe pulling data just from shopping.com or someone else who has a shopping API. Again, for the sake of driving that traffic directly to all of these merchants. Right? So if we then eventually come to a page and we see, a huge percentage of the clicks that go off of this page, whatever the page be, I'll go to this merchant. Well, then to Google, that looks like you've just put extra steps in the process of driving traffic to this merchant, right? Why didn't you take them directly to this merchant? And so we understand it's because you can't, you're not allowed by the affiliate policies. But to us, that would have been the preferred way to do it.
Okay. So the opposite also comes up for a lot of questioning. A lot of affiliates operate their own affiliate page where they direct traffic from search results pages to their affiliate page, and from there they link to the vendor's page. Now, is that discouraged? Is that something that you would prefer that they not do?
Yeah, and again, I think there it just depends on what is the purpose of that intermediate page. If it is just solely to hide the fact that you're promoting eBay.com, Amazon.com, and putting it on a different domain and then taking all that traffic to that page anyway, then yes, we highly discourage that. That is exactly what's going to get you a bad landing page quality score. Now, if you can get to a point, travel comparison shopping is a good example, right? So ultimately, everyone that does flight comparison searches has the same data. It's the same flights. It's the same destinations. It's the same prices they have access to. But the question now becomes, how did you help the user actually decide which flight was the best for them? And that's where if you look at a site like kayak.com, well, it's taking all the same information, but it's put a great user experience on it. And you go up to anyone and you ask, is Kayak doing good things for you? They're going to say yes, right? So if you can build a similar experience, whether it be comparison shopping, whether it be reviewing, whether giving people any sort of extra information that helps them make the right choices, that's the thing that we would prefer to see. Now again, I would say if we see a lot of sites that have fake reviews, right? So they're all pushing for this one ebook to be bought or this one merchant to be favored. That again, we're going to frown upon, right? It has to be legitimate stuff that's used, that's contributed by different users, and not just you guys or affiliates trying to push a certain merchant.
So on those review sites, there are lots of review sites where you might find reviews of perhaps 3 products, and each of those products has an affiliate link. Is that preferable, or would you prefer a big site with deep review of just one product and an affiliate link from that? Or are review sites on the whole not encouraged?
Yeah, and I don't want to speak too much in absolute answers here, whether it's one product or 3 products, but ultimately if you took one product and you really had extensive reviews of that, that could be a fantastic experience, right? Let the users judge what that experience is. If it's a single page website, to direct traffic to one ultimate destination site, that's probably not going to fly. That's probably not going to have enough information. If it's something that reviews multiple options, so say that you're looking for a diet program and there's 5 different ebooks out there, and you've actually read them, you've evaluated them, and you have a little table that says this is for this type of user, this is using a lot of exercise, this is using diet. You know, if you can build something that's actually adding value to the user and helps them make the smart decision, then yeah, that could definitely be a good site.
Okay, that's great. What about videos? Does Google care about long-running videos on sites?
So we don't necessarily look at long-running videos as a negative,
Okay.
but we, in certain cases, we will go and look inside the video and understand what the video is about. So if you, for example, make unrealistic claims within that video, or again, you make the free iPod offers, you make people believe things that aren't real, then yes, that could also get you in trouble. Ultimately, though, I think you really want to think about this from the perspective of the user, right? If they come to a site, are they getting the value that they want? Are they able to interact with the video, stop it, pause it, replay it? Is it a really long video they have to sit through? Like personally, I do not like those. I'm on the web because I want to get stuff done quickly. I don't want to sit through a 10-minute sales pitch. Right, but that's me. I mean, there might be other users who are completely different in that, and so that's what Google is then is going to look at. How do other users interact with the site? So, one thing that I would say too is look at your bounce rates, and your bounce rates. I can't say whether or not that's a signal that we look at, but ultimately, if I was a marketer, having a high bounce rate is a very negative thing, right? You just paid for that click, now people are leaving that site. So if you've just put up a video and nothing else on that page, and that's turning people away from it the moment they visit, then yeah, probably would want to go and change that. And if that's a poor user experience, well, even if Google doesn't look at that today, chances are that we're working towards a way to identify those types of things, and that you will eventually get a penalty for that.
Okay. What about specific topics, Fred? Are there any specific vendor topics that Google does not encourage? Because we've heard of experiences where site owners who have topics relating to perhaps teeth whitening, or topics relating to other types of topics that might not be encouraged, have poor landing page quality scores. So,
yeah, and so
talk to us about that.
Absolutely, and I think in the teeth whitening example, the issue was not so much with teeth whitening. The issue was more with the fact that they would give you a free 1-month supply and then sign you up for auto billing at the end of that, right? So it was duping the user into thinking they were getting a product for one price, but really, they might figure out when they got that second shipment for 6 months that they just paid $200 for that. That's what we're not cool with, right? Because that's deceiving the users. When it comes specifically to health-related products, we do have certain rules against certain supplements, certain diets. If you make crazy promises, like there's this one product that lets you sit on the couch, watch TV, and it's this belt that you put on, and it puts electric pulses, and supposedly you're going to get six-pack abs if you weigh 400 pounds. I don't think so, right? We're all smart enough to understand that's not going to work, but unfortunately some people do believe it, right? And that's where Google then does want to step in and protect the consumer and get rid of those unrealistic claims. Much to the same point, I think, get-rich-quick schemes. Right, so there's a lot of stuff out there. It's actually really funny because people, they sign up for AdWords thinking that AdWords is a system that pays them every time somebody clicks on the ad. Right, it's beyond belief for someone who works in this industry, but people actually fall for this. Right, so anything like this, we're absolutely going to immediately shut down the moment that we find it. And so in some cases that could be a landing page quality penalty to make it very expensive to advertise, but in other cases where it's legitimately misleading or it's malware that's being installed, in those cases we will shut down the whole account.
Okay. What about the format of a particular page? Do you care just about the content of what's on the page, or do you also care about the format? Like, for example, are there iframes, is there a video, is there an audio playing on the thing, is there an interactive person, a chat script, all those kinds of things. Do they have a factor on the landing page quality scores?
Yeah, and again, I think that goes back to what's the user experience that all of these components are providing. If you put it in iframe for the sake of masking a URL, for example, well, then you would fall under the territory of dubious SEO techniques. And dubious SEO techniques like cloaking or stuff like that, that also gets you penalties on the search marketing side, right? So that's going to get your site disabled completely. Other than that, honestly, we don't really care that much, and I think that's where the bounce rate question becomes a big one again. Are you actually providing a useful page, something that a lot of users can interact with and enjoy seeing? The other thing is uniqueness of content, uniqueness and usefulness of that content, right? So if you're just copying everything from some other site, well, chances are that Google's going to say, oh, 95% of the copy on this website is duplicated from somewhere else, so probably not the greatest experience. And then finally, I would say one good example is very long sales pages that scroll on and on and on and on. I know they have good conversions, but they also do trigger because oftentimes that's a get-rich-quick scheme. They're going to make dubious claims of many sorts. So that is something that would actually trigger us to look more closely at it. That's not to say that you're automatically going to be kicked out of the system or have a bad landing page quality. But yeah, I mean, it looks like something like a fish that smells bad. So we're gonna go investigate that.
So it's like triggering an IRS audit.
Yes, exactly.
So you file in.
Exactly.
Yep.
You're triggering an audit in that case.
Right. So you put in a dubious claim, and that could trigger an audit. Okay.
Right.
I think we can relate to that. What about the business practices of site owners? Now, Google primarily focuses on ad content and delivering good quality of advertising to the user and good search experience to the user. How does that extend into the business practices of the vendors or the affiliates involved in advertising?
Yeah, so when it comes to the business practices, the type of stuff we look at is how does private data get treated, right? Is the purpose of the site to collect this harvest the data and then spam people with it or do something else that's relatively sketchy with it? Automatic payments where the user doesn't understand they're signing up for this. They might put in their phone number and they might check a box where they didn't realize they can actually get billed on their credit card, on their cell phone statements, right? That's a dubious business practice. That's something that we're going to go after. So being open, being transparent, letting users know exactly what they're in for, very important. And those things, I would say, the major risk there becomes that if you dupe users, we have a lot of users on Google and they're vocal. They will let us know if they thought that Google sent them the wrong way. And that's when we're going to go and investigate and say, oh, yeah, that user was duped. That's a bad website, so we shut it off. And that's counted as a strike against your account.
Okay, that's good to know as well. Now, a whole lot of site owners have talked to us about the fact that their site was given a low landing page quality score, but they notice a lot of other sites that are very similar kind that seem to be running just fine. Is that only a matter of time because before they get low scores themselves, or is there something else that could explain how other sites are running where one site gets a low score?
Yeah, ultimately that's a matter of time, and the best way to make that time as short as possible is to tell us about those sites, and we'll take a quick look at that and disable it. Now, I know that's not usually how people like to do business, so yeah, I mean, ultimately a couple of things that happen, right? So if one of your sites all of a sudden starts to get an increase in traffic, that would get it re-reviewed potentially, and if that review finds something that we didn't like, we would then go and look at all of your other sites as well. So that's when your smaller sites or sites that might not have previously triggered anything would get taken a look at. So that could be an issue. Now, if you have a bunch of all very small sites, then yeah, they could be doing exactly the same thing that somebody else much bigger did that was just shut down, but you might not be on the radar yet. But again, the moment that business actually becomes really successful, or the moment that Google automatically gets to it down the line, you could certainly start seeing issues.
Okay. You had a couple of questions as well that came in from the audience, didn't you?
Yeah, so the one question I got before the session was how to test the waters without getting the doorway penalty. So say that you have a new affiliate program and you don't want to devote too many resources to that. You want to build out something quick to see, is there actually traffic on this? Are people actually clicking on this? And how do you do that without getting slapped with a doorway penalty? The unfortunate news is that there's not really a way. If you do build a page for the sake of just redirecting to that end merchant, the actual affiliate company, then yes, that will probably get caught, and we will say that's not a great user experience, and that will count as an LPQ strike against you. And by the way, I've been talking about strikes, so I should explain that a little bit, I think. So there's really a couple of things going on, right? The first is, you're an advertiser, you make a mistake, you do something we don't like, we assess a landing page quality penalty on that, or we disable that whole domain completely. That's one thing. We tell you at that point, hopefully you understand from the landing page quality penalty that you've done something Google doesn't like. You go and understand what it was that we didn't like, and you go and fix that. You come back into the system and everything's good. Right? That's what we hope happens. The unfortunate thing that happens is many times people understand how to game the system, or they think, okay, let me make a few changes, very minimal changes, and let me resubmit that site. You do that a couple of times and you get caught again and again and again by the landing page quality penalty or something else. Then eventually we say, well, these guys are not listening, they're not cooperating, they're decreasing the user experience that we offer on Google. So we're going to suspend that account, as well as any other account from that advertiser, both the accounts that exist today, but also any accounts they start up in the future, right? So essentially saying you're done with AdWords for the rest of life. That is the painful one, and I know that is the one that a lot of people talked about last August.
Right, and that was going to be my next question, which is, when somebody's AdWords account gets banned for egregious behavior, is that ban really permanent? I mean, really permanent?
Yeah, so nothing's always permanent, but the honest answer here is, if you believe that you were not correctly notified of what you were doing wrong, like in certain cases, the email might not have correctly gone out, we can check on that if you believe that to be the case. If you believe that you were caught in error, so you were doing something where we thought you were doing something, but really when we look deeper, you were actually doing something that was okay. In those cases, certainly, we'll turn the account back on, but it does require you to initiate the contact with us through the help center, right? There's an email form on there. Through that, you can then explain what you believe went wrong. We will reinstate that account. If we do find that everything was done by the procedures that we have at Google and that it was done for the correct reasons, then yes, it is a permanent ban.
So, as they say in the movie Dumb and Dumber, you're saying there is a chance.
There's always a chance.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. All right, so next we get to the advice that you might give to affiliate marketers in this room. I mean, there's lots of folks that have very, very innovative programs. They're doing some really exciting things. What broad advice would you give to the affiliate marketers in this room about how to avoid being penalized on landing page quality scores?
So the days of easy money in affiliate marketing, on search engine marketing specifically, those are clearly over, right? So it's going to take significant work, significant investment to make some money, but that's not to say there's no money left there. The areas where the money could be somewhat easier is if you actually crack the nut on some of the newer systems, right, where there's less competition, where maybe others haven't quite figured it out, right? There might be areas of the Google Display Network where there's less saturation, right? You could still get cheaper clicks without having to build out massive campaigns, without having to build out massive websites of your own. So those are areas that you should consider. Then, ultimately, if you do see this as a long-term business that you want to be in as an affiliate, think about the user experience first. Like, are you doing something that's unique and that's going to make a viable business for the next 10 years? If you're building something that's going to get you great results for the next 6 months, enjoy the ride while it lasts, but don't count on it lasting beyond that point.
Cool. Did you have another question?
Yeah, I had another question that I got from the audience, which was, are certain link systems tainted? Right, so are there certain, for example, if you use ClickBank links, does that get a red flag, for example? So the answer is fundamentally no. There's nothing that's tainted in terms of if you use that, you automatically get a penalty. But I wouldn't rule out the fact that certain types of link behavior would raise a flag that would then cause further investigation. Again, one of these audits to happen.
Right. Okay. And are there any examples you could give about the types of link systems that would raise a flag?
I mean, one thing that I would be very cautious of is if you had too many redirects. You know, the moment that you have more than 2 redirects, there's usually something you're trying to hide. If there's a legitimate reason for using that, come and talk to me, help us understand why. And then the other thing is it's not so much link system as what types of links do you have, right? Is every link on your site an ad, you know, from AdSense or some other system, or is every link an affiliate link? Then yeah, we'll probably take a look at that because we want to understand, do these affiliate links all sell the same product? Are they just, you know, putting a doorway page in, or are they actually providing value in this respect? But again, it's not to say that you're going to get a penalty for doing one thing. It just, you're going to cause an audit.
Okay. What about specific answers? I mean, another question that we get asked is, we're told we have a problem with our landing page quality score, but there's no actionable specific information that we get from Google. Is there any way by which site owners can get more specific information about exactly what they need to fix, or is that a problem?
Yeah, and that's challenging because so much of this is a gray area. So if we tell you to, fix exactly this, then yeah, you might be fine for a little while, but down the line, you could run into issues. And that's where I think, read the help materials that we have and start to understand which business models Google frowns upon. And again, we don't frown upon being an affiliate, but we do frown upon get rich quick, dubious claims, automatic payments, software that you're paying for that you could have gotten for free somewhere else. These types of things, no matter what you do, you're probably walking a fine line that's not going to, you're eventually going to fall off at some point, right? The other thing, I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay, sounds good. Do you have any other questions that you?
No, that was all I got.
That was it? Okay. So now is probably a good time to open up the floor for questions. We've allowed a fair amount of time, so let's, you sir, let me come up to you. Okay.
If I know somebody that, say, 5 years ago had a Google account, but the account charged off, and now every time they try to open up another account, for some reason Google still finds it, how do you go back and fix the 5-year-old account that you still owe money on so you can have a clean record?
Oh yeah, so yeah, if you ended up not paying your bills at some point, eventually that goes into collection, and then eventually you go into a bucket where we're like, rather not do business with this person again, right? So in that case, once you come up afterwards, give me your card. One of the issues could be that you don't even have access to the account, so let's get you access and put you in touch with the payments team to settle those bills, or at least wipe that slate clean. But pay your bills if you can.
That's good advice.
Yes.
Gentleman in the black there. You, sir. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so the thing I'm always staggered by, given all the technology and everything Google is able to do, is for the people who don't want other people to be able to use their display URL or link to it, why would you not, inhibit that and just have it work? It just seems like it happens all the time, and it really sees it in direct violation. There's just not an easy way to say, I claim this, I'm the company, don't let anyone else use it. I struggle to understand why that problem is solved.
Let me repeat that question, if I may. The question was, with all the technology that's available, why is Google not able to prevent somebody else from using a display URL that belongs to a particular company?
So that great question. I'm writing that one down as feedback for the product team. I know that's been an ongoing discussion for a long time. It falls into legal issues, and those do tend to get complicated. So I don't want to answer that here, but if you come up afterwards, give me your card. I can give you an answer afterwards.
Yes.
And in what cases is Google okay with the collection of information about a person, whether it be phone number, email, or name? What sort of values are given or not given? And your ideas on that?
So the question was, in what circumstances is Google okay with site owners collecting information about users? Name, address, phone number, whatever else, email, whatever other details.
Yeah, so for the most part, we are okay with that, but it's more a question of how do you disclose what you're doing with that information, what happens to it eventually, right? So if you're collecting legitimate leads for a contractor business, for a car dealership, whatever, that's fine. Just make sure that users understand what's going to happen to that information. And then you probably have seen the Google comparison ads that we have. So this is for mortgages. So do a search for refinance or mortgage. And you get a little box that opens up and it asks you how much is your house worth, or how much is the loan that you're going for, what is your credit rating. And one of the key components of that is actually the consumer protection that we do, right? So we will put the consumer in touch with that vendor, that actual bank, but it goes through Google's the middleman, right? So the moment that consumer says, I've got what I needed, please stop contacting me, we can do that for the user so that that third-party number becomes disabled. And so I would try to think it in much that same way. So again, once you have that lead from the consumer, respect their choices around privacy and around what you do with it down the line. That's typically what we're looking for. So if you're transparent and you give options around it, then you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. And you can ask for anything that you want at that point.
With that in mind, does that mean just having a thought out terms and conditions and privacy policy?
That's certainly a very big part of it, yes. So having that thought out privacy policy, terms and conditions, but then also making sure that none of those users end up coming back to Google and complaining about, you know, getting spam after they recently signed up for this one website, right? And that's sometimes hard to track back, but if we get enough of those complaints, then certainly we would start taking a look at what's going on.
So there's one other point that I'd like to just add to what Fred just said, which is that in terms of conversions, et cetera, a lot of people say, you know, when I present a website in this fashion, I get fantastic conversions, and that's 3% or 4%. But what you don't realize is that when you get 3% conversions, 96% of the people don't buy. And those 96% of the people, some of them actually end up complaining. That's exactly what Google looks at, and that's what impacts landing page quality scores. So even if the conversion is good, that doesn't mean that the people that are not buying are going away quietly.
Right. And the other point to that, Dush, is that what you consider to be a conversion, if it's a doorway page, then a conversion is somebody going onto that ultimate website. You could have great conversions, right? But that's not what Google's looking at in that case. We're saying, okay, you still put an extra step in the conversion funnel that was not necessary, where you tried to pretend you were somebody else. So that's a negative. So conversion rate actually doesn't factor in that respect, but it does factor in, like you said, in the people who don't convert and who actually end up complaining. That's a negative, and that's going to hurt you.
Right. Yes.
I'd like to better understand your rich page violations. I know I presented to Kathy several months ago that there's been some affiliate sites that are knocked down, where even as you up there talking, you say that you support the affiliate model, but yet you frown upon redirects going to, say, a secondary merchant's cart, right? So, in essence, aren't you forcing affiliate sites to basically have their own commerce? Because I see a lot of very thin reseller sites that do have their own commerce that are still up and running fine in the paid search space, where an affiliate site that was great rich content, hundreds of pages of information, but since they were redirecting traffic to a merchant cart, basically were shut down for rich page violations. So it seems like you're saying one thing, but yet it's not really happening in the other. So how does that all work? How would you explain that? And relative to the piece of if you have your own commerce, then exactly how does that weigh out in overall quality?
So the
The domain carries through all the way to purchase, right?
So the question was, could you explain a little bit about the sort of the rich page violations issues, where some pages seem to be rich with content, but seem to be given low quality scores. Other pages don't seem to have very rich content, but have commerce running. But they seem to be running okay. Could you explain?
Yeah, and I think your question was specifically in reference to caffeine, which is the SEO side of the business. So I can't really speak to that. I'm on the advertising side, the SEM side.
Specific to paid search advertising, I may have mentioned I've seen the
Oh, okay. Yeah.
paid search
Mhm.
after the caffeine, post-caffeine links, but this is still very specific to
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so if you have your own shopping cart system, then ultimately the fact that you remain as a consumer on that site, you do your whole business on that site, that will look to us as a positive experience, right? I am surprised to hear that you're saying that sites that had built out very rich content were being shut down. So there, again, I'd love to take a look at those sites, but it becomes a question was the only purpose of that content on the site to drive traffic as quickly as possible to that end merchant? Right, so you could have, think about it too, right? You have your landing page, and that could actually be a very different experience than if somebody typed in your main URL. That often confuses people because we are going to look at what is that experience once they come onto once they click on the ad, where is it they go, and what is it they can do from there. Right? If you're pretty much funneling them in at that point and giving them very few options as far as what to do, what other content to read, because ultimately we all know that the more content people read, the more that they have an informed decision, the less likely they're going to end up doing business with that one merchant, right? They're going to do research, so they might go to somewhere else. But if it was legitimately putting good content in a usable flow that the user could have used, then that surprises me, and that's the type of example I'd love to take a look at to make sure that the automated systems weren't too aggressive and did something they shouldn't have.
Yes.
As a search publisher, sorry, my name's campaign lawyer. Every once in a while, you get a merchant that, let me know it's a new merchant, you get a little quality score for it, so you stop working with that merchant, but that's now forever on our account. What can we do to alter, change, what can we do?
So the question was, as a search publisher, you work with a number of merchants, and a particular merchant gets a low quality score, and that merchant remains an account with you as a publisher. Right. And they remain an account with you even after you stop promoting them. But how might you get back to working with them? Is there any way that you can?
No, I don't want to work with them. I want my account to not have that.
Oh,
Right.
you don't want the account to have the taint of having worked with that merchant.
So let me give you a perhaps somewhat long answer, but hopefully fairly detailed. So if you guys mostly probably have MCC accounts under which you have all of your individual accounts, for which each account probably has one merchant in it. If you have a bad quality score for a new merchant account in one of these sub-accounts, that is isolated from everything else that happens to the MCC, right? So if you then say, okay, this merchant's not working for me, I'm turning off this account, then that poor quality score, and poor quality score coming from potentially having had poor click-through rates or some other issues like that where you maybe had keywords that weren't working very well, that's fine. That's not impacting anything else you do, because that sort of quality score lives within each account individually and does not roll up to higher accounts. Now, if you, and to answer the other, it could be that you say, okay, you had a bad landing page quality in those accounts, that does roll up to you as an advertiser, so any account that's associated to you will see that penalty. In that case, it is something you have to delete those accounts, and technically the rules state that you have to clean up that experience. Now, obviously, if you are not the merchant, it's kind of hard for you to go and change that whole experience, right? So if that's something that you saw, I'd love to talk to you afterwards to understand a bit better what you think you should have done, and then make sure that we can respond to that correctly.
That's great. Thanks, Fred. Yes.
We are a merchant. We take content from the vendors we purchase from, and we put that up on our site for thousands and thousands of products from many different vendors. Oh, sure. We're a merchant who takes copy from a lot of our vendors to describe the different items that we sell. We do it from hundreds of vendors across our entire site. And you made a comment earlier about if our site looks like it's just duplicating content from other sites, that's something you frown upon. We really don't have another option, because that is what we need to do to describe the products best.
Sure.
Are we going to get in trouble down the road?
Not necessarily, and that's why I threw in the example of kayak.com, where all the travel information is going to be the same. It's the same flights, the same prices, the same descriptions. So we're not necessarily going to frown upon duplicate content, so long as we also understand where that came from. And we do understand that product descriptions, yes, there's usually one that's provided by the manufacturer, which the majority of merchants are going to use. But start thinking about the social web, for example, right? Like, why is it that you're just going to have the way the merchant described it without having user reviews, without maybe having a pick of the week from one of your editors, right? The more that you do those types of things, the more that it starts looking like a legitimate business, as opposed to just repurposing things that were given to you, by a very limited set of others, the better that you're going to do, right? So, but having that one paragraph description with the same image that everybody else has, so long as you have user reviews and all that other stuff, you're going to be fine.
Is Google under the assumption that when people do a search and click on ads, that users don't click on an ad expecting to be sold?
Is Google under the impression that when people click on an ad, they don't expect to buy?
No, absolutely not. We do expect people to buy, and so that's why SEO and SEM have very different standards, right? We do understand that if you're paying money for that click, you want the user to buy something. So, and that's why we're not asking you to write novels worth of description pages, right? Make it succinct, make it to the point. But if you get to that point where you're doing barely anything, then we could start saying, okay, well, what's the purpose of this page? Maybe we just don't understand what the purpose of that page is at that point. So then we could go and investigate. Then if we see, oh, this is an affiliate just linking then directly to whatever the merchant is, that's when you get into trouble. But we fully have an understanding that you guys want to sell stuff, and we don't want to make it burdensome to the point of decreasing your conversions by having these additional requirements. Now, what we do want is we do want users to have the options if they want it, right? So if they come to a site and there's only that search funnel again, and they can only proceed, put it in your card, put in your credit card and buy it, and that's it. They can't go to a page that describes your shipping policies, that explains your privacy policy, that maybe there's a different section of your site where they can easily link to go and find some, some descriptions of how to buy, whatever it is that you're selling. That's the type of stuff that we'd love to see because it helps users make smarter decisions without necessarily detracting from your goal, which is to sell them something.
I personally, when I go to the internet and I search for something, and you have the Google ads there, I'll click on one. I don't know if that's okay with this, but I'll click on one, skim it, go back, click on another one, skim through it, go back, look through that one, skim on it, and then out of the three that I just skimmed through, I'll finally go back to the one that I want to spend the most time on. Does that create any type of negative score for us as advertisers or affiliates when people do that?
So the question is, if a user were to click on a number of different ads, skim through the search results, and then go back and spend more time with one of those many that they may have clicked on, does that affect the landing page quality scores for the one that they clicked on or for the others?
Yeah, so ultimately, if you are always one of those two sites that gets skipped after having been reviewed, then yes, it'll probably come into play at some point. The reality is many consumers behave just the way that you do on the internet, and so there's a certain expected behavior. It just when you start deviating from that too much, follow. If they click on it twice, then yes. So and there's a little bit of a difference there in how users click. So they might click. Some people open new windows for every one they have, and then they just go back to that. If they click, go back, and then click again, that's 2 clicks that you're getting charged. Now, we do have protections in place. Some users, mostly older users, love to double click on everything.
Yes.
You are not being charged for that. So if it's a double click behavior, that's fine, you're not paying for that. But if it's comparison shopping where they go back and forth, then yes, you are paying for that. Also, of course, if there's excessive clicking, where we think it might actually be some sort of suspicious behavior, somebody trying to run up your bill, that also would get filtered out, and you can see that in the reports that we provide.
A lot of times you talk about measuring bounce rate, how long they're on the site, which links the user clicks on after they go to your page. You're getting most of that information through analytics, I would imagine, something along those lines. Are you penalized if you don't use Google Analytics, so there's no way for you to track that information?
So the question was, are you penalized for not using Google Analytics on your page if most of the data is coming from Google Analytics?
No, absolutely not. And so we do not want to have any sort of penalty or advantage for someone who uses Google Analytics. And in fact, we're able to get our data in other ways. But what I would say is important from your question is the fact that you as the advertiser can get similar information to what Google gets through your own analytics account and put that to good use, right? So if you see that your bounce rate is too big on certain keywords, certain landing pages, go figure out why is that, fix those. It's going to increase the number of sales that you make, and hopefully, along the way also increase your quality score. That's not necessarily going to be correlated, right? But yeah, use that data, but Google has other ways to make sure that we're not negatively or positively impacting you for the choices that you make as an advertiser in terms of which of our products you use. We got 5 minutes.
We have 5 minutes, so let's take
Let's do some
question
rapid
over
fire
there.
questions.
I have a client, it's a merchant, they've been doing business for a long time, have an AdWords account for many, many years, recently, and they're selling the product direct, they're linking to their own page, has great quality scores. Their quality score dropped, and they received a warning on the account saying that Google has had customer complaints about the product. Now, I've never heard of that customer complaining about the product to Google. And they have generous refund policies, they've got good customer
Yeah, so that's in your specific case, please come up afterwards. We'll exchange information. The other thing I would say, that the reality is that there's a number of companies that pose to be somebody else. P90X comes to mind as it's a great product that's getting a lot of ripoffs from China. A lot of those users then try to ship it back to China. They can't because the product broke. Meanwhile, they've been led to believe they actually bought it from Beachbodies, who's the official company behind it. And so then, Google could be in a position where we actually think that this company, Beachbodies, which is a great company, has done some really bad things, and they have no recourse because we've already put them in that bucket of, okay, you guys are horrible scammers, when really it was somebody else doing that for them. So in those cases, honestly, come up afterwards, go to these conferences, find a Google person, and let's dig into this.
So let me repeat the question. Tell me if I've got it correct. I could barely hear you. It was about ads quality again? Sorry?
Yeah, basically, you said that in the beginning that you'll take a look at sites that are important advertisers to get results. Do you find that there's other advertisers that are basically reporting their competitors?
Oh, yeah.
So the question was about ads quality and people who actually complain to Google. And the question was, it is possible that a competitor could be complaining about someone, and is that taken into account by Google?
Yeah,
Does that happen a lot?
It happens. Certainly happens that competitors complain about each other, and then that might cause a review. Now, the good news is that we have a centralized policy team, so it wouldn't be just whoever you happen to email that's then going to make a judgment, a subjective judgment on that site. It actually goes to the team that makes these policy decisions. They have really very well written guidelines that explain it, how do we act in this case, and then if they find, okay, this is a new area that we didn't realize was an issue, they can start crafting new policy around that. They can feed that into the algorithms. So there's a whole process around it, and it's less subjective than I think you might fear.
We have 2 minutes, so time for probably 2 questions.
Can we do like rapid fire? Everybody just ask
Sure.
your question. I'll see if I can
absolutely.
spin one answer.
Yeah.
In terms of dubious claims, specifically for the fitness weight loss niche,
Yeah.
obviously there's some that are more dubious than others as far as auto billing, pills, powders, etc. But as far as information marketing is in regards, like for Google acting as the Better Business Bureau, who is making the decision as far as what information is quality and what are not? Because that's seems to be a big problem as far as slaps or quality scores, for example.
Okay. Can we get rapid fire? I'll try to answer it in one.
Regards the automatic quality score mechanism, I noticed a phenomenon that when you have an account with 10 keywords, all with the same, all relevant, with the same quality score, but let's say 5 keywords are triggered and 5 are not. What may cause that?
Okay.
We have like a
Any other quick questions?
On bounce rate, is there a differentiation made between like back bounces and forward bounces? Like as an affiliate, I would love to see a bounce rate of 100% as long as they're moving forward, like going toward the merchant sites with the purchase.
Back bounces versus forward bounces on bounce rate?
How essential is the nav bar on a landing page for the quality score?
Okay. Was that one more?
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, that will take another 5 hours. So as far as Google being the judge of the claims that are being made, if it specifically is a third-party endorsement or something else that the company claims to have for a diet product or a fitness product, then there's very specific ways that are very akin to trademark policy violations, where you can actually submit a form to our legal team, and they will then take down those sites that make those dubious claims. For example, if you pretend you were called best consumer choice, I can't remember.
Not in that respect, but maybe as far as like how much weight to lose in a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
For the FTC, I think they could do maybe 1 or 2 pounds a week, whereas online people can say you lose 30 pounds in a week. So
Yeah, and there. Mhm. Yeah, and there, if it sounds too good to be true, and it's again that's very subjective actually, and let's talk about that afterwards. I'd like to understand that better as well, how the FTC works around that. But we mostly say if you make it sound like it takes no work to achieve these weight loss results and they're permanent, then that's what we're going to go after. If it could be that you actually achieve this, but that it's an uncommon result, that might be okay. So we can talk afterwards about that. The next one was the disparity of keywords getting hit. So I think there we go into broad matching and how we choose keywords from an account. So I think that's a little bit of a different discussion. But typically, if you see half of your keywords getting impressions, the others don't, it's probably because some of these keywords are trumping the others that you have in your account. Then as far as the bounce rate back and forward, yes, absolutely, that's different. But if you have 100% forward bounce rate to your merchant, then you look like a great doorway page. So it's going to be just as bad as if you had 100% backwards clicks. If you have 100% bounce rate forward, but it's going to a variety of merchants, then you're probably building a great comparison shopping engine, and that's probably a good thing. So again, it depends on the exact situation. And then as far as having a nav bar for good landing page quality score, so the exact way of navigating, not so important to us, but I would say the moment you put people within a very confined funnel where they can't get out of it, you really only give them two choices, right? Which is to use the back button because they don't feel safe with the whole experience, or to go and make the purchase. And typically we see that not working as well as if you gave the consumer the option to also go to other parts of the site. And the full algorithm I will not disclose.
Great.
So,
Fred,
we'll
thank
be
you so
around
much.
afterwards. So.
Yeah, we're here up here, so thank you very much, Fred, for your time, and thanks everyone for being here. So if there's
Thanks.
any additional questions, please come on up.